Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the session today. My name is Sai Kumar Samala. I'm a specialist solution architect for containers at AWS. I work with customers in helping them deploy container workloads on AWS. Sometimes it could be migrating their workloads from on-premise to AWS, and sometimes migrating and modernizing their workloads. So if you're running on EC2, we are migrating them and modernizing onto Amazon ECS and EKS. So whenever I talk to customers, they definitely talk about releasing the versions. We definitely want to release new versions every day or maybe every week, right? So their main problem is they wanted to deliver faster. At the same time, they don't want to spend a lot of time in managing the deployment, infrastructure, and manually rolling back the deployments. So today we are going to talk about continuous deployment on Amazon ECS and see how Amazon ECS built-in features is going to do the deployment faster, reliable, as well as whenever there is failed deployment, how is it even going to roll back without any manual intervention while keeping the application up and running at all times. So when we talk about releasing the application, we have the release process stages. So typically there are 4 stages, starting with source, build, test, production, or deploy. So in the source stage, usually the developer will be checking their code, committing their source code to the code repository. Any peer review is usually done at this stage. And in the build stage, this is where we build and generate all the artifacts for the application. Such as unit tests, we compile the code here. And if you're running the container workloads, this is where you're going to generate the container image and pushing it to a repository like Amazon ECR. And once that Docker image is ready, we are going to deploy it into the test stage, right? And all the testing happens here, including integration testing, load testing, security, and everything. So if everything is looking good at this stage, then only we are going to deploy the application into production. So once the application is deployed into the production, we deploy the observability tools to make sure the deployed application is working fine, monitor it for the resources, performance, things like that. Now, the continuous integration falls between source and build stages. So as soon as the user commits a code, we have a continuous integration system that is going to build the artifacts. Now, later, if the user is going to make a small change to the code, we have to have a system that the code is automatically built, the new artifacts are generated, new container image is built, and pushed to the ECR. So any small commit that is made to the code, with every new commit hash, the build has to be run. Now, the continuous deployment is starting from the source to the production end. So in the continuous deployment, there is no manual step at all. As soon as the user or the developer commits the code to the source or to the code repository, the build will kick in. It will do generate all the artifacts, push the container image to the ECR or any container registry, and the test happens. You can use any automation like AWS Lambda, or you can use your own custom resource there. And if everything is looking good, then it will automatically go to the production. If there is something wrong between test and production, then there should be a rollback that will automatically happen, and the end users or your customers should not see any downtime. Now, in this whole release process stage, Amazon ECS or AWS Fargate comes into the deploy stage. But what are some of the continuous deployment goals? We want to make sure that the code is automatically deployed into staging for testing. And we also ensure that the safe production deployment is always there without affecting the customers. And we also want to make sure to deliver faster while increasing the deployment frequency and also reduce the lead time and failure rates. So by knowing the continuous deployment goals, Amazon ECS is going to handle the rollback using the rolling deployment. Amazon ECS supports both rolling deployment as well as blue-green deployment. And in today's demo, we are going to talk about rolling deployment. But before that, like I mentioned, in the release process stage, Amazon ECS falls into the deploy and run stage. So this is where your infrastructure is. Whether it is staging cluster or the production cluster, it is going to run in the Amazon ECS. Now let's do a quick refresher on Amazon ECS before diving deep into how Amazon ECS is going to handle the workload. Amazon ECS, Elastic Container Service, is a fully managed container orchestration service that helps customers to efficiently deploy, manage, and scale container workloads in the AWS cloud. It is highly performant and scalable. It offers enterprise-grade serverless compute called AWS Fargate. By using AWS Fargate, you don't have to manage any container host. AWS will take care of launching the right-sized worker node for your task or your container. Customers can also deploy their workloads using EC2 launch type, or if you have your own customer-owned hardware, you can also deploy your workloads on those hardware using Amazon ECS Anywhere. So with that, Amazon ECS offers Amazon ECS deployment circuit breaker. So when you're using rolling deployments, deployment circuit breaker will automatically monitor the task launch and health check failures of the new deployment. So let's say there is a problem with the new deployment, it will automatically roll back to the last known good state. So how does it know even the last known good state? If you see in your deployment history, you will have a deployment that is in completed state. So deployment circuit breaker will automatically roll back to the previous state, which was in a completed state. So it will use the previous task definition and make sure that the previous tasks are deployed. And enabling ECS deployment circuit breaker is going to be only one-click setup. So you're not going to make a lot of changes if you have been already using ECS for a while. And if you want to onboard to deployment circuit breaker, you can just click on update service and enable it with the one-click setup. So with that, let's get into the live demo. So in this live demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to purposefully create some errors in an application and deploy the application, and we will see how Amazon ECS is going to roll back while keeping the application up and running throughout this deployment. So here I have two clusters called staging and production cluster. So inside staging, I have an ECS service called Hello Server. Within Hello Server, I have 3 tasks that are in running state. I have 3 tasks that are in running state, and this same replica of this cluster, I have another one which is called production, and this prod cluster is also having a server, which is Hello Server, and in this Hello Server, I have 3 tasks. Again, they are in running state. It is taking time for load, but I have 3 tasks that are in running state. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate some load. And here we are going to hit the endpoints of both staging cluster as well as the production cluster. So as you can see, this is just a small application. It is about just a greeting. It says, welcome to reinvent. And as you can see, the request count is keep changing. So I'm just running a loop and curling these 2 endpoints, staging and production cluster. So I'm going to make a small change in the code that is going to introduce some failures in the application. But we are going to keep monitoring the right side of the screen to make sure that the application will never go down and the HTTP 200 OK is always there. So I am going to make a small change here. So I'm going to introduce some health check failures in this application, as well as I'm going to change this greeting from welcome to reinvent to welcome to reinvent 2024. Okay, now I'm going to add So the developer typically maybe accidentally made some health check errors here, and they just wanted to update the greeting here. So I'm actually mimicking that. I'm going to update the greeting and then push the code. So now that the code is pushed, let's get back into the AWS console. And here I have a code pipeline that is already created. So as soon as I have pushed my code, the source stage is already triggered, and then the build stage will be continuing. So let me quickly show this code pipeline. So I have a source stage, I have build stage, then deploying stage, and then here there is testing stage. So as soon as the code is deployed into the deploy stage, in the testing stage, the test is going to happen. And if something is wrong there, it is going to automatically roll back to the previous deployment, and it will never deploy into the production environment. So while the build runs, let's go ahead and make a change in the service. So I am in the Amazon ECS service. So this is the staging cluster. I'm going to open the Hello server and click on Update Service. And this is where you enable the deployment, circuit breaker, and rollback on features. So after I update it, I'm going to discuss what this is going to do. So if you have been using Amazon ECS for a while and doing deployments, we have minimum running tasks as well as maximum running tasks. So in rolling deployment, this will really come into play. So in this example, I have desired tasks as 3. So at any given point of time, Amazon ECS is going to run 3 tasks always in running state. For any reason, if one task is down, Amazon ECS is going to deploy another task to make sure it is meeting the desired count. But the minimum running tasks and maximum running tasks percentage comes into play when you're doing a rolling deployment. So during a deployment, we are instructing Amazon ECS to always run minimum 3 tasks, because in my case, the desired count is 3. And the maximum is 200%. So the 200% of 3 is going to be 6. So during the new deployment, you can expect to see at least 6 tasks to be in running state. Out of those 6 tasks, 3 will be old version, and the 3 will be new version. And once the new version 3 tasks are completely healthy, then only Amazon ECS is going to terminate the old 3 tasks. So with that, next we have the deployment circuit breaker. So by enabling the deployment circuit breaker, it is always going to monitor the deployment task launch state, and if there is any issue, it is going to roll back to the previously completed state. So while the pipeline is running, I'm going to switch back to the terminal here. As you can see, the count is increasing. It is still 200 OK, but if you take a look at here, it is still welcome to reinvent. I have changed it to welcome to reinvent 2024, but let's see, the application still did not deploy it, and we are gonna take a look at the pipeline here. So it is in the deploying staging. So now I can come back to the staging cluster, Hello server, and in the deployments, if you see, there are 2 deployments that are going here, and the rollback is already happening. The reason is there are some tasks that were actually not healthy. So here, if we come here, so as we can see, the deploy staging has been failed, but it did not move to the next step. It did not move to the test staging, and it did not move to the deploy prod, because we are not deploying a failed or errored application into the production environment. But if you see here, the terminal is still up. We are still getting 200 OK, and welcome to reinvent message is still there, but the 2024 is not there because the new version has not been deployed into the production or even the staging yet. So when the rollback happens, you can see the rollback information within ECS. And this is a new feature that we added into Amazon ECS, which is Deployments tab. So within deployments, you can see what deployment history, including how many rollbacks have happened and what are the successful deployments, including their time, date, and everything. So if you're a DevOps engineer who wants to troubleshoot and understand how your deployment was happening in the past, you can come to Amazon ECS console, and inside the deployments tab, you can expect to find more information. So next, let's figure out what actually happened in the pipeline. So if I take a look at this commit hash code, it is going to show me what are the changes that developer actually made. So here, I made a change to the greeting, as well as I made a change on the line 53. And this is the line 53 is actually creating the problem here, which is introducing health check failures. So the application is not actually going to the new version. Now, before doing that, I'm going to enable the deployment circuit breaker on the production service as well. So I'm in the prod cluster inside the Hello server. I'm going to update service. Like I said, this is going to be just a one-click, and we also want to make sure to roll back on failures whenever the deployment actually fails. So in the Amazon ECS console, we can also see the old 3 tasks that were actually launched, and it is using a different task definition, which is revision 25. And all these 3 were actually unhealthy, and Amazon ECS did not actually route the traffic to the new version yet. Now I'm going to make change to the application here, coming back. So I'm going to comment this. So now that I push, we can come back to the Hello server pipeline here. And in this, we are going to monitor the deployment that is going to happen. So here, the build is going to run in the build stage. Like I mentioned, this is where the container image will actually get created, so we can see more information in this build stage. And then as soon as the build is complete, it is going to deploy into the deploy stage, which is into the staging cluster. So let's watch the terminal. So as we can see, still the application is up, even though the developers are committing the code, making changes to their code, whether it is whether introducing errors or no errors. We don't have any downtime as of now, right? The application is still up, and we are seeing the traffic being rendered properly without any issues so far. So let's monitor the pipeline. We are in the build stage. So while this is happening, how many of you are using deployment circuit breaker today in your ECS deployments? Okay, great. So now the build stage is finished. It is in the deploying stage. We can actually come back to ECS cluster into the staging, and we can monitor this particular service to see what's happening. So in a real world, when you're doing a lot of deployments every week, you don't really come to console and see the deployment is going good or not, things like that, right? So you can see the service events, deployment history here to understand what has happened or what's going on with the ECS deployments. Now, if I come to the deployments tab here, we can see deployment status is in progress, but on the right side, you can see the application is still up, and the traffic is still being routed to the old task, which is still showing welcome to reInvent, and now the 2024 is coming up. So here, there is one. So the new tasks are launched. The new tasks are actually showing up as healthy, so Amazon ECS is basically routing the traffic to the new tasks, which in this case, it is 2024. But one thing to note here is the new application is still in the staging environment. But as you can see in the production environment, you're not seeing the new version being deployed yet, because we want to run the tests to make sure the deployed application is well and good. And if everything looks good, then only we are moving into the production environment. So for that, inside the pipeline, let's see what's happening. Okay, deploy staging is still going on, and right after that, the test staging will go on. If the test staging fails, it should not be deployed into the production. But if it passes, then it will have to go into the deploy prod. So now let me come back to ECS cluster and check out how many tasks are actually running here. So we have 3 tasks in running state. And if we take a look at the task definition version, the old task definition version tasks were stopped successfully, and the new task definition is actually in running state. So between 24 and 26, we have a failed deployment with the revision 25. So revision 25 is not even there here. And once the deployment is successful, it is still in progress. So it is making sure that all the tasks are actually healthy, and yeah, now it moved into success. So let's monitor the pipeline to see what's happening in the test staging.